Let's bring in Florida's GOP Senator Marco Rubio, interim chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. You're welcome. So Ron Johnson asked to declassify that email that she sent to herself, Susan Rice did. He says it shows that the former administration was trying to sabotage the next administration. Do you agree?
Well, I think that's a legitimate question to ask, but let me point something out. I think one of the key things that people are missing, if you look at the timestamp of that email, it was after 12 o'clock that day. That email actually happened while Donald Trump was already sworn in as president of the United States. It's the reason why Mr. Grinnell and the administration had access to that email, and it came under the Trump administration because it was kind of an email written to herself after Trump had already sworn in. So it's kind of bizarre in that sense. I think the other relevant thing to look at in that email is it actually makes it abundantly clear that this is actually, at that point, no longer an intelligence community issue. This was an FBI issue, which is why I believe that the hearings and judiciary is the proper forum to look at how the FBI handled this entire process and sort of figure out if there was any wrongdoing in the way it was approached.
Senator, one of the things that she wrote in the email was that the president said, I want everybody to do everything by the books. And then James Comey said, we're doing this all by the books. From what you have seen so far, did they do it by the books?
Well, you know, there's a process by which the FBI comes in to talk to somebody. You consult with the White House counsel. You potentially show the individual you're asking questions of a transcript. And by the way, you're asking questions that are relevant to a potential crime, in essence, that are material to an ongoing and legitimate investigation. And there are questions about two of those three things. We know they didn't show them the transcripts of what it is they were asking about. We know that they didn't coordinate with the White House counsel. They actually went in there sort of under false pretenses and what appears to be an effort to entrap them. This whole thing makes no sense. Michael Flynn was a longtime member of the intelligence community. He would have known that anytime anyone talks to a foreign official, there are chances are that those calls are being intercepted potentially by multiple agencies around the world. I mean, this happens all the time. And he would certainly know what's out there and who listens to what, including other countries for that matter. So, again, I think that I think all of this is a bizarre turn of events, and there's a lot of legitimate questions to ask about whether, in fact, the FBI did not follow normal protocols here. We know, for example, from public disclosures now that the FBI agents all said that they didn't think Mr. Flynn had lied. And I don't know Mr. Flynn. I'm not one of them. I just think it's really important to protect the integrity and the trustworthiness of agencies as important as the FBI. And things like this undermine it. The damage that's been done to the intelligence community, but particularly to the FBI, by the behavior of a handful of individuals, and his post-career behavior, especially by Mr. Comey, have been, I think, incredibly damaging to a very important agency whose overwhelming number of employees are not the kinds of people that would do this. But obviously there are some people there that decided to, for whatever reason, act in a way that has damaged that agency and that bureau.
If Lindsey Graham gets a chance to question some of these people in front of his committee with Sally Yates and Brennan and Comey and others, I think they're going to say that they actually thought they were turning over the country to Russia, because how else would you describe this behavior? Rick Grinnell was doing an outstanding job as the acting D&I director, disclosing a lot of this after leaving as ambassador of Germany for now until John Radcliffe takes over, assume he's confirmed, said this yesterday in his cabinet meeting that was Yeah, I'm sure he will. He got out of committee. Here's what he said yesterday about the intel community.
I have heard from hundreds of members of the current intel community who are extremely pleased with transparency of their work. And that's what they're shooting for. That's what they want to provide to policymakers, is information that is not politicized by politicians in any way on any side of the aisle, but to be able to protect their intelligence estimates. We all know that they're estimates, and they're proud to give them when not manipulated by others.
What else do you need to know, Senator? I'm sure he'll tell you. I mean, what else? What other questions you have?
Well, first, let me just say it's an important thing to remind everybody. The intelligence community gathers information from a variety of sources, including, open source reporting and everything else. They analyze. Then they have analysts who look at all of that, and they tell policymakers, here's what has happened, and here's what we think it means. And then ultimately, it's up to policymakers to make decisions on the basis of that. And by the way, sometimes policymakers look at that information and disagree with the analysis. It is really important that our agencies provide analysis that is accurate, that collects information, provides accurate analysis, but not analysis that's biased for political purposes or analysis that's designed to further a political narrative. It's also really important that stuff like this not be put out in the public domain to further political narratives. At the end of the day, elements of a phone call between Mr. Flynn and the ambassador from Russia at the time were leaked to the press. Someone broke the law. Someone took that information, gave it to members of the press, and broke the law. And I think that alone is cause for accountability, to find out who did it. Obviously, that is information that was owned not by the intelligence community. It was owned by the FBI. They had possession of it. And so I think it's very valid to ask who knew about this information, because it narrows the list of the people who are responsible or could be responsible for putting this in the public domain, which should never have happened. You cannot have a law enforcement agency have people within it that break the law. This is a valid area of inquiry, and I'm confident that the Judiciary Committee is going to do a good job of getting to the bottom of it.
I want to ask you about the small business loans. I know that you have served as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Small Businesses and Entrepreneur. The average loan that a small business got was $118,000. But look at the number that Planned Parenthood got. There are 37 Planned Parenthood affiliates that received $80 million in loans. One of them out in California got $7.5 million. I know you, Josh Hawley, Rick Scott, and James Langford, you're upset about this. You say they have violated the rules. Explain how.
Yeah, so they just don't qualify for it. There's something called affiliation rules, and that is that if there's some independence between an affiliate and a parent company, then each of these companies are allowed to, each affiliate is allowed to apply on their own. In this particular case, in order to be a Planned Parenthood affiliate, you have to get approval of the parent board, the one that's located here in Washington, D.C. A parent board or a parent organization that is sitting on, according to their own numbers, in 2018, close to $500 million in net assets. Okay, $500 million in net assets to a large, well-funded organization in Washington, D.C., who controls the operation of these affiliates. They just don't qualify under the affiliate rules. It's as simple as that. Leave aside all the other issues. They do not qualify. So they need to return the money. And if they did this knowingly, they need to be held accountable. And whoever helped them do this knowingly needs to be held accountable. That includes potentially people on staff at the SBA, the banks, and anybody else.
You know they're not going to return the money. They're going to hire big lawyers to represent them. What are you going to do then?
Well, ultimately, it's now up to the SBA and the administration to pursue it. The SBA, I think a legitimate question is, how did this get through the SBA? I mean, how did somebody at SBA approve this knowing that it violated the affiliation rules? It's as simple as that. And that's a question that we're going to have to ask. Ultimately, others will have to look at how to enforce the law. Congress can't enforce the law, but we can reveal truths and hold people accountable, and we intend to. Beyond the politics, they do not qualify for this loan, and I'm glad the administration has jumped on it.
Senator, let's talk a little bit about your home state of Florida. The entire state now is in full phase one. Broward and Miami-Dade now in phase one. Other parts of the state are more open than others. Can you explain how Florida has been able to so effectively handle the reopening, because there's such a large demographic of people who are over 65, and the worry was that they would be at risk, and yet it seems as if the government there has isolated people and is taking care of them in a manner that we don't see in a lot of other very large states.
Sure. First of all, remember why we did the shutdowns to begin with, and that is because we didn't want the hospitals to be overwhelmed. So part one is the state government under Governor DeSantis and the local governments and our hospitals all took the steps necessary to create new capacity. There were field hospitals open that were never used. They opened up more beds. They canceled elective surgeries. They did all kinds of things so that the hospitals did not get overrun, and they did not. Number two is that the governor allowed each county and city to set their own requirements. And that's important because every community has different unique characteristics and different needs. And that happened. And number three is the people of Florida complied. People stayed home. I mean, you hear all these stories about people on the beach. Everyone I know had been home and has certainly limited their lives, some at great personal and economic expense. These three things led to the result that we were able to keep our hospitals from being overwhelmed. Now the question becomes, until we have a vaccine, and we hope that sooner rather than later, How do we reopen the economy and get back to a new normal, or get to a new normal while mitigating the risk? This is what we're dealing with now, is we're trying to lower the risk. Now, if you look at some of the new numbers, there are places that still have a lot of vulnerability. Prisons with a lot of people close to each other, nursing homes in particular. So to the extent you're seeing a lot of hospitalizations or new hospitalizations, it's because they are taking people out of nursing homes that are not able to isolate them and putting them in a hospital setting where we are able to protect them from getting infected. And that's where our focus should be. But ultimately, we could not be under the conditions we were in indefinitely. And there are people pretending we could be like this forever. We can't be like this forever. We've got to figure out a way to diminish the risk and protect the most vulnerable, but we can't be in that condition forever.
Right, exactly. That's what the PPP program, which you basically, your handwriting's all over it. You know the money's running out. In places like New York, where the county and the governor are taking their time to reopen, that money runs out. They're responsible to keep their people on the payroll. All of a sudden, they can't keep their people on the payroll because they're running out of money, and now they won't be eligible to make those loans grants. So something's got to be done along with the 75-25 split. You guys wrote a good plan, but in practicality, it's not working for certain industries. Are you and Mnuchin going to be flexible enough to help these people?
Yeah, look, there's two issues here at play. The 75 that you mentioned, but the bigger one is the 8-week requirement. Some people are saying, look, we can't fund payroll in 8 weeks. We need 12 weeks or 16 weeks. There's actually unanimity up here for the most part. Everybody agrees, all right, you know, this crisis has evolved. It has become a different type of crisis because it's different rules in different places. We need to provide more time for people to use that money as opposed to having to return it. What's the point of that if they're going to use it for payroll? I think the only question now is, can we pass it as a clean bill? Can I put a bill on the floor today that says we're going to extend it from 8 weeks to 12 weeks or 16 weeks and pass it? Or are Democrats or someone else going to insist that we add something else to it beyond just that provision that's not uncontroversial, that's going to have a fight over? I hope we can do it. I mean, Democrats have told me they agree on extending the time frame. Let's just do that as a clean provision before we leave, because by the time we get back here, there are businesses who took it in the first wave. I heard you had a restaurant on a few minutes ago that talked about how they're about to hit the 8-week mark in 3 weeks. And so we got to move on this pretty quickly. I'm ready to go. We're ready to do it. Hopefully we can get it done.
Yeah, because why pay employees if they're not in the restaurant working? They might go back in another month, and that's when they really need that PPP money. Thank you so much, Senator, for focusing on that, because so many people are concerned about it. And thanks for being with us.